Can you connect eARC to eARC using HDMI 2.1 cable? Is it possible to get a QDEL TV right now? Is Haya beginning to lose touch with quality? Are Japanese companies actually dying? Welcome to the comments. So we've got this one from Daniel de Sousa Barbosa. This from a Spanish channel, but I'm translating to English. It says, my new Samsung TV is eARC, but my Yamaha receiver is still ARC, that's ARC. Can I still use a 2.1 cable? Well, the answer is yes and a no. So HDMI ARC is designed for HDMI 2.0, while HDMI 2.1 cable is designed for eARC, that's Enhanced Audio Return Channel. So in as much as the cable can transmit so much signal to power an eARC Dolby Atmos full channel, I believe there are up to 32 channels that eARC can transmit. Nevertheless, HDMI 2.0 can do something close to that, but not as much as the 32 channels that can be transmitted by Enhanced Audio Return Channel. So you're going to get a system that will work, but you're going to get a system that would work like a HDMI 2.0. So you basically get what ARC can do, which is really good. It's manageable. I don't think there are much people out there trying to transmit full Dolby Atmos capable raw files out there for their entertainment. Except you have an indoor cinema, that's a different case. But for everyday user, ARC will still serve you well. So yes, you can connect both of them, but the output will be limited to a HDMI 2.0 capacity, which is ARC. In order to get eARC, both devices have to be eARC, which is HDMI 2.1. So we've got another comment from Frank Bruning. This is like 4 weeks ago. He said, I want a QDEL. Well, Frank, you can't have a QDEL yet. QDEL is still in R&D stage, and as of last 2 years, we had QDEL come on CES, and we had high hopes that it was going to hit the market at least April. Although no one said it, we're just hoping secretly. But unfortunately, that did not happen. And this year's CES, there was more of RGB mini LED. First of all, my first encounter with RGB mini LED was from Sony. And then TCL came up and other brands, were working towards the same RGB mini LED. And now we have a lot of RGB mini LED. So RGB mini LED was what we saw at CES that was going to hit the market anytime soon. As for QDEL right now, I don't think you can get any QDEL appliance out there. Not even the laptop TCL showed us. The technology is still in development. But hopefully by CES January 2027, we might be able to see something that is ready to hit the market. These things take time. They might get the prototype right and it could be working like the one they show us at CES, but getting it into production line could take a longer period of time. They have to do a lot of testing, especially in terms of how long and how far the technology can go when being used by an average user. And then they have to also work on the production line, and we're also looking at scalability. How much of these things can actually be produced on a commercial scale without creating some sort of bankruptcy for the business? That was the problem with micro LED. Micro LED was actually ready to ship, but the problem with micro LED was the cost. Getting to mass produce LEDs on a micro scale is still very much expensive, and it just doesn't make sense for an average user anymore, because you can also get an OLED equivalent for way lower cost price. And I think the same thing is happening to QDEL. So we just have to wait a bit longer until we have something that is ready for mass market production. So this is from Padudang 15171, like 3 days ago. I don't think Haya is good. My Haya is less than a year old and it's no longer good to use. It doesn't make ice. If it does make any, it melts a little and is really weak, even when the power is turned up. I don't think Haya is a bad product. In fact, I don't think Haya is the problem. Although I don't know about their recent products though, but Haya products are really good. In fact, in some other countries like Nigeria, for example, we have Thermocool. So they created that company to specialize on the refrigeration need, and Haya's Thermocool has gradually become one of the best refrigerators and freezers that you could actually get around the African region right now. Hisense isn't close to it. LG might compare a little bit, but nah. Samsung, maybe, but Haya's Thermocool is still one of the best, especially when it comes to insulation. And this information is not coming from me, not a sponsored video as usual. This is information coming from people who actually sell these products, the electronic showrooms themselves. They deal with a lot of brands. They know what some of the consumers need. And of course, I once worked in a showroom for over a year, so I know some of those information, some of those data, and hire is really good. So we've got this one from Lovalona 7389. It says Japanese companies lost their edges in the 2000s. Okay, I saw this comment and I was like, yeah, that is absolutely true. That happened because of the market entry of brands like Samsung and LG. You know, before Samsung and LG, the market was mostly dominated by brands like Sharp, National, Panasonic, which is one and the same. There were other brands like Grundig. There was Toshiba, there was Fujitsu. Of course, there were the UK giants like Philips. But these guys, as at the time, were competing based on durability. The products were very much well built. It sold, it worked. I believe there were standards of manufacturing then that actually set a market cap. It made the barrier of entry quite high. And most Japanese brands observed it, and most of the UK brand also observed it. In fact, the US brands also observed it. But when the North Korean guys came along, which is LG and Samsung, they came up with this cheaper kind of LCD and an entirely cheap style of manufacturing that undercuts Sharp and Panasonic, National, and the rest of them. And that includes Sony. So they had modern technology. The TVs were more modern. They had nice remote controls. They had better colors, but they had cheaper build and they were more affordable. So the first thing we noticed was that there was a decline in the availability of Sharp TVs. Sharp Electronics just immediately, gradually faded off the market, and the same happened to National and Panasonic. National and Panasonic completely disappeared. In fact, I think they just died. And Sony had a smart move because rather than compete head to head with these guys on pricing, Sony went uphill and started doing premium TVs with the first set of Bravias, which were really good. I loved those Bravia TVs. I loved the Trinitron, which was super cool. I mean, those Sony TVs were good. So I would blame the North Korean companies. I would blame LG. I would blame Samsung for the fall of the Japanese companies. And it's a good thing because some of these products became cheaper, but they also became less durable and manufacturing standard dropped drastically. There were lots of products that were getting bad after 2 years. There were lots of products that were getting bad after 3 years. And, you know, it was cool because you could easily replace them based on the price. So it wasn't that big of a deal for consumers. But some of us who had those older Japanese brands, TV, DVDs, even video players and all, still have those things still function up to date because the manufacturing was awesome. But we're having the Chinese guys give it back to them. It's kind of a manufacturing karma happening with Samsung, with TCL and Hisense kind of pushing these other guys to the limits, having them overperform in order to keep up with the tempo of the market. They are coming up with new technologies, they're coming up with new innovations, and they're making the prices so available. So we now have China products dominating the market. TCL and Hisense are all over the place, and we have Samsung and LG trying to keep up. But then that's the game they started, so they just have to play it, and it's a win-win for the consumers. The only problem there is the quality of manufacturing that drops because of the price, and these people trying to undercut each other to take dominion of the market. So it's too bad. I really miss Sharp, especially. Sharp had some really durable products. Sharp TVs from the early 2000s still function till date. And on the flip side, LG and Samsung TVs from the early 2000s are all dead or at the mechanic or scrap. They just died along the way. They didn't make it. So that's it for the comments today. I'll see you again next time. I'm Justin. Bye bye.